and I'm excited about tonight's conversation. I get to sit with actress, film and stage producer, civil rights activist from the United States, Gina Belafonte. She is the youngest daughter of singer, actor and activist Harry Belafonte. She has appeared in such films as Bright Lights, Big City, Tokyo Pop, Black Klansman, and she has served also as producer on Sing Your Song, a documentary film about her father. She is co-founder for Gathering for Justice, a non-profit organization whose aim is to end child incarceration and eliminate racial disparities, in the criminal justice system. She is the CEO of Sankofa.org, a non-profit which is founded, by her father. I think I need drum rolls at this point as I introduce you to my guest, Hi, Gina.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure.
Listen, my pleasure. My pleasure. What brings you to Accra? Why are you here? Why are you in our city? Why are you in my city?
You called and I came.
I like the sound of that. Why are you here?
Well, I have been working closely with a woman by the name of Marcia Thomas, who is with USA for Africa. And USA for Africa, and let's be clear, it's not USA for Africa. Everyone thinks it means United States of America for Africa. But USA for Africa means United Artists in Support of Africa, which is the entity that produced We Are the World. And We Are the World, the very famous song, my father inspired its creation. He heard Bob Geldof's version of a song that was a Christmas song that was sung by many European celebrities. And then he thought to himself, well, what are we doing? What are we doing in America for the plight of people in Africa as it related to hunger, and specifically in Ethiopia? And so he put together a big group of artists with his pal Ken Cragen, who was a driving force of the song. And Ken called Quincy and called Lionel Richie, and then they all got together, and Michael Jackson, and magic happened. And so Marcia Thomas has been doing a lot of work here on the continent, and especially in Accra, in Ghana. And she invited me to come to a conference and to meet Dr. Bennett, the ambassador, and we've done a wonderful day of adding my father to the beautiful Sankofa Wall of Ancestors at the W.E.B. Du Bois Center. And we did that here, and it was very emotional, and really such a beautiful ceremony that Dr. Bennett put together for us, and that's why I came.
Wow. Well, I have met Marcia. She sat exactly where you're seated. We had a nice, lovely conversation.
That's why I'm so comfortable here.
And I mean, the work that you do, all of you, it's, so let's go back a little bit. Let's talk about America. Let's talk about living in America today. Let's talk about, that situation that necessitates, what you do. What's the situation in America today?
Well, there's a large situation in America. There's been a large situation in America since its founding. I really work at the intersection of art and activism. That's what we do at Sankofa.org. A lot of the issues that we work on and to amplify the stories about are the issues of mass incarceration, the issues of immigration, the issues of the climate crisis, and for certainly income disparity and violence. Much of the people in the United States that are confronted with the issues of poverty are people of color. And in the United States, we tend to criminalize poverty. And so we do as much work as we can to shine a light on these issues, to make sure that voters understand the issues so that when they go to the polls to vote about things, they understand the ramifications of their vote. The issues in the United States, which there are many, around a woman's right to choose, or around who your district attorney is going to be. These are all very important voting issues, and we do our best to use art as a tool to educate people around what the different people in office, what that means to be a district attorney. What does it mean to withhold the right from a woman? So we take an artistic approach to let people understand what the ramifications of those actions could be, what the best joyful outcomes could be, and using art as a tool to express those things.
So let's speak about that for a minute, arts and activism. I mean, around here, artists tend to, for want of a better expression, stay away from politics, because there's this thing about staying neutral or staying, because it's so commercial, isn't it? So when I hear arts and activism, I'm like, oh, that's for the brave, no?
Well, yes and no. I feel like art in itself is generally very political. Even if you're shying away from issues, that's a statement in itself. And I think that people who are afraid to talk about what's happening, I think they are worried that their fan base is not going to buy their music or buy their art. But I think it's important for artists to work from a very authentic and genuine place. If you're not a political person, if you don't care about those things, then if all you care about are drugs, money, and women, then that's what you're going to sing about. That's what you're going to rap about. That's what you're going to make sculptures about. But if you are sensitive and compassionate and empathetic to the plight of people and struggles, then your music, your art, your poetry, your dance, your plays, what you write, your films, your documentaries are going to be about things that you want to shed a light on. And that's what art does. It sheds light and it opens hearts and minds to have a deeper understanding for what the issues are and what people's stories are.
So let's talk about Sankofa.
Yes.
And it's Ghanaian. I'm so excited.
Yes.
Let's talk about Sankofa. Tell us about Sankofa.
So Sankofa.org was birthed out of the desire to sort of institutionalize the capacity of my father, of a Harry Belafonte. How do you make someone like a Harry Belafonte an institution, somewhere where people can learn and understand the way in which he walked through the world and what he did with his platform? And so we thought, let's create a nonprofit organization that sits at the intersection of art and activism, that focuses on bringing other artists in to educate them, to motivate them, to activate them, and then use the content that we create to do the same, to educate, to motivate, and to activate citizenry and the people that will see the art, that will take the art in, that will learn from the stories that we're telling. And at first I was a little resistant with my father in terms of what we were going to call this nonprofit. He said, we're going to call it Sankofa. And I was like, really? I was just like, it's going to be so hard for me to explain what that is. And then when he explained it to me, why, there was, for me, like, no turning back. There was no other possible name. And the reason why we're calling it Sankofa is twofold. One is because, on face value, the name Sankofa, which is a Ghanaian word, meaning go back and get it, really, really reflects the way in which we approach the issues that we shine a light on through art. We look to our ancestors, we look to our elders to tell us stories, to give us insight into what we could be talking about in order to inspire the future to go forward and to inspire young people to have a deeper understanding. So that was one reason. The second reason, which was really, I think, in some ways, the more important reason, is because my father brought two men here from the United States. One is a Latino man by the name of Nane Alejandres, and the other is an African-American man by the name of Bo Taylor. And the two of them were former gang members from opposing gangs. And my father felt that it was important to bring the shot callers of the gangs together to have a conversation. And then when he learned more deeply who they were as people, he said, I want to take you to a place, because you think you have problems and you think you have poverty and you think you have issues. I'm going to take you to a place where you're going to learn some things. And he brought them to Ghana, and he brought them to other countries in Africa. And when they saw the level of poverty here on the continent, they were humbled. And they came back to the States with so many beautiful stories of meeting the people here and exchanging conversations and finding sisterhood and brotherhood. And they said, the thing that stood out to them the most was Sankofa, the concept, the idea of Sankofa. And so at first what we did was we did an evening, and we called it the Sankofa Awards. And what we did is we paid tribute to the silent heroes of the community, the people that really made shift and change in the community, but nobody really knew. So we were going to celebrate them with the Sankofa Award. And we did that. And then sadly, years later, Bo Taylor passed away. And he was my mentor in the criminal justice space and working in mass incarceration. So when it was time to name the organization, we thought about it. We didn't know what we were going to call it. And then my father said, we're calling it Sankofa. So.
That's so meaningful.
Yes.
That's so meaningful. Let's talk about your father.
Yes.
Let's talk about your father. I mean, Harry Belafonte.
Yeah.
That's your dad?
That's my pops.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, how was that like? I mean,
he was my dad, so I never had another dad, so he's the only dad I ever had, right? It was great. It was amazing. I mean, like a father, not all fathers are the same, but my father, he could be very intimidating. He could be scary, He could be very loving and wonderful. I mean, he worked a lot. He was away a lot. He did his best to bring us as his children to where he was when he was working, when we were off from school. He did his best to not be touring and performing or working on a film when we were in school, unless he was working on a film that was in, the United States, so he could be close. And his social justice activism, he was this way forever. Before he was an artist, he was an activist. So this was something that was completely ingrained in our lives growing up. And my mother also was a dancer and a very political person. And so, political people, artists, there was like a revolving door in our house growing up. There was always aunties and uncles who were of a very high level of stature that I didn't know. I was young. Martin Luther King was like an uncle, he was just, Sidney Poitier or Fannie Lou Hamer or, Diane Carroll or Ozzie Davis and Ruby Dee. I mean, people just flowed through our home, and often both my parents were working on political issues, many that were local. So there was always a campaign. There was always, we had to stuff envelopes or lick stamps to send out to people notices or fundraisers at our home. And then also throughout the years, my father would, and my mother, I would sit at the table, I would be very quiet, and I would listen, and they would talk about all the corruption that was going on in different countries in Africa, in the administrations and the governments, and the coups and the people overturning governments, and they were very, very, very much a part of many of the liberation movements in the different countries in Africa, whether it was Sékou Touré or Lumumba or whoever it was. And I know that they were very, very close and very, very conscious of what was happening here all the time. Obviously, one of the bigger, most recent, I will say, men that my father championed was Nelson Mandela, and working on the issues of apartheid in the United States and boycotting. And my father was at the forefront as an artist, bringing awareness. He shared his stage with Miriam Makeba and brought the new rhythms and tones and language and words in your mouth, to the public of the United States, and it helped create the whole concept of world music in the United States, a genre that up to then was not really happening so much.
I can imagine that he was a big influence, in, your background, your choice of career, your activism. Would I be wrong?
No. Both my parents.
Right. So now, can we talk about your background? Can we talk about, acting for you? Can we talk about that? Because I'm curious.
Well, so I am dyslexic. I have a learning disability, and also I think there was no such diagnosis for it, at least that I knew of when I was younger. But I think, if anything, I would call myself ADHD as a child growing up in particular. I was always fussing. I couldn't stop moving. My mother would always say, "Will you be still?" And I couldn't be still. I was always very, very active. And for me, the times when I found the most stillness was when I was singing, dancing, acting, drawing, doing something artistic. I didn't know it at the time, but I just knew that I found comfort in art. And I used to watch my parents, do artistic things and just be like, oh, wow, And then when I was in middle school, I was in a very academic middle school, and I was not doing well, and I felt stupid. I felt, all the things you feel in middle school, at that age. But it was really, really difficult. And then I heard about a school called the High School of Performing Arts. And so I said to my parents, I was like, I think I would really like to go to this school. So we went to check the school out. You had to audition to get in. So I worked on an audition piece, and I got into the school. And when I got into the school, my academics got better. I ended up graduating with honors academically because I was doing so much of my art. And this school is a very famous school. It's the Fame School. A lot of people have seen the movie Fame. And this was the school that I went to. And I was able to focus my energy on acting and being creative and being different characters. And then I went to university, and I also studied traditional classical theater. And then when I graduated, I was working as an actor, and then I started producing theater, and then I started directing, and then I started producing films, and it all just sort of rolled into becoming someone in the entertainment business.
So, if I pushed you to choose between acting and producing?
Well, I always tell everyone, I said, if someone said to me, you could only choose one thing, and it will sustain you, it would pay you money, it will, you won't have to worry about having other jobs, what would that one job be? Hands down, acting.
Really? I thought the producer made you the boss, no?
The producer does make you the boss. It also gives you a lot more on your shoulders and a lot more stress and a lot more things you have to be and responsible for. And I love producing, and I do it now. But there's something about acting as an artist for me. It's so creative to embody a character and to play around with, how you portray the person. That is very exciting for me.
It gives you multiple lives, doesn't it?
Yes, exactly. You can be a lot of things. I can act like I'm a producer.
Wow. Let's talk about this. honoring your father's legacy.
Yes.
You know, I mean, in a way, I feel as though I can relate, you know, in some ways. And it's wonderful, you know, in that I see that you sort of share the passion. It's yours, it's your passion, right? But then it's also linked to his passion, which makes it enjoyable, and yet it's what's the word I'm looking for? Like you have to get it right. Bit of a pressure. Correct me if I'm wrong. How do you feel about it?
I think that for a long time I felt the pressure of getting it right. And now that I'm a little older and wiser, this is real gray. I don't dye my hair this color. I think now that I'm older and wiser, I have found a way to just be myself. And a lot of who I am is my parents. You know, they were very magical people, and we were very close. I was very close with both of my parents. So I watched them move through the world. It's like lotion. They're rubbed into my DNA and my skin and my heart and my soul. And so I think I find much pleasure in what I do, because not only do I know that it's important, what I'm working on, it's important, and I have a responsibility and a service to provide, but I also get to honor my parents while I'm doing it. And I'm grateful for that.
It's beautiful.
Yes.
It's beautiful. Okay, so, I mean, I want us to go back and talk about activism.
Okay.
Activism, and, you know, first of all, let's just look at activism. You know, for you, what would it be? I realized that you could almost say there are different forms of it, and people come to it perhaps because of who they are and how they choose to, you know, but surely there has to be some commonality, no? You know, in activism. And I find it an amazing higher calling. You know, I look to activism and activists as the real people, the real deal, right? But first of all, what would you say it is? And secondly, for all of us who have dreams of being, you know, how would you advise that we come to it?
Well, activists are not a monolith. We're all very, very different people. There's so many different ways to be an activist. For me, I think it's very, very important that I'm very clear on my intentions and also my capacity. So when I am activated to be of service, to do something, to work on a campaign, to highlight an issue, I first really ask myself questions on the issue, like what is it about the issue that is upsetting me, or what is it about the issue that brings me passion, and then I think, you know, well, why do I want to be an advocate for that, especially if I don't have lived experience? Because I think it's important, if you have platform, and this is what I watched my father do countless times, when you have a platform and a space and a place where you have people that listen to you, the best thing to do if you're passionate about an issue that you don't have lived experience about is to invite the people with the lived experience to share your platform. Give them the mic. Let them speak to it, because you can talk to it, but it's almost inauthentic, right? And also there's the activist that's going to walk the front lines and pump the fist and hold the line and let everybody know where to go, how to do it, how to organize, bring people together, get the meetings going. And then there's going to be activists that work with those activists that help bring the water, get the coffee. Are you okay? Do you feel good? Let me cook you a meal. You know, who keep the place all clean, so then when the people come in that have to strategize, they have a space that they don't have to think about that. That's also activism. Providing and creating space that is a place where people can come. Sweeping your neighbor's lawn or their driveway, if it's snowy, or getting groceries for our elders. That's all activism as far as I'm concerned. But I think it's very important, if you're interested in activism, to do a few things first. One is to really look in the mirror at yourself and ask yourself, what am I really good at? And what do I have the capacity to do? Because we all have hopes and dreams, like, I want to bring world peace. Like,
Change the world.
Change the world, you know? But what's your capacity to do that? Do you have a 9-to-5 job? What are you responsible to? Do you have children you have to take care of? Do you have, what is your work? How can you make way in what you already are doing to raise awareness within the workplace, with your children at the dinner table? How can you shine a light on an issue and have a conversation at the dinner with your friends? The other is, what are you willing to give up? Which is a big issue. Are you willing to die for the cause, a cause? Are you willing to go to jail? Are you willing to be very afraid against a force that could, hurt you or kill you? So you have to ask yourself those questions. I think it's important, because many people sometimes think they know, and they come into a space and they can create danger with the best of intentions. But if they don't know, if they haven't been taught, if they aren't organized, sometimes it can be very dangerous. I think of the civil rights movement, and we see, for instance, often there are films of the African American people sitting at the lunch counter and getting things thrown at them and being taunted by white people. If you're not trained in the tactics of nonviolence, you perhaps won't have the inner strength or stamina to just sit there and take it. That in itself is activism. That's very defiant. That is powerful. And it's not passive. People think that that's passive because you're not hitting back. It's quite the opposite. It makes the person who is hitting have a deeper frustration with their own anger, that somehow it reflects back to them, and they have to deal with it. So I think it's important for people to really be clear on what kind of activism they want to engage in, and also learn about the issues, learn about what you want to support. A lot of people want to support things, and like artists, for instance, a lot of artists want to be of support because they're famous, and sometimes it's okay, it's nice to have awareness brought to an issue, but other times artists will say, no, I don't want to do that. And the reason they don't want to do it is because they don't understand it. They don't know what it is. And sometimes if you sit with them and say, okay, let me tell you what it is. Let me tell you about it. And then they go, okay, now I can go and I can speak to it and I can say, this is the organization you all should be aware of to learn more about that. And that's the way they can use their platform. And that's what we do at Sankofa often, is help artists understand what the issue is and who they can connect with to have an authentic relationship to the issue, as opposed to just being a famous person that wants to raise awareness around something.
For the sake of it. So let's speak specifically to Sankofa, and the courses. And if there are any artists that, of today that we know that are involved in any of the things that we do.
Oh yeah, there's lots of artists. Carlos Santana, Common, John Legend, Aloe Black, Jussie Smollett, Estelle, Dave Matthews. We have lots of artists that work with Angelique Cujo. So there's a lot of artists that participate in the different initiatives that we do. They don't all do the same thing. They all do different things at different times. But yeah, there's lots of artists that work with us, and it's a gift, really, for us to have their ear, for them to have, learned about the way in which my father walked through the world. To have him as a mentor to them was a gift. They understood that they too could make a difference in the world without worrying about their fan base or a bottom line, because they felt strongly about something.
I mean, they had seen him do it,
Yes.
and get celebrated,
Inspired, yes.
for it.
Yes.
You speak about capacity, and I understand what you mean by it in terms of your personal capacity, what you can do, and all of that. But I'm extending the argument to capacity to, especially with organizations, the ability to. And let me refer immediately to your dad. I read somewhere that he, at some point, I don't know if you mind me saying it, but funded, Martin Luther King.
Yes.
Right? And, kind of supplemented what, he earned
He was
as a
the major
preacher.
fundraiser for the civil rights movement.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, I mean, that's something, right? To be able to sort of, and I'm choosing my words so carefully.
It's okay.
Right? To be able to, in some instances use his own money, in some instances raise so much money and give it out to causes.
Yes.
Why was this that important to him?
I think, he came from poverty. He saw the plight of poverty work its psychology on his own mother and on his family. And I think when he became abundantly wealthy, he just felt like he could do that. He didn't want to keep it all for himself, and he didn't. My father lived comfortably, but he didn't live an extravagant life at all. And he wanted to be of service. It was more important for him to bail young people out of prison so they could get back on the front lines of the civil rights movement or register voters than it was for him to be able to, buy a mink coat. He had his priorities, and his priorities were to be of service.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. You also speak about lived experience, Again, I read, and I think you've spoken to that a bit, his work in Rwanda, his work in South Africa, his work in, and I also read him referencing third world dictatorship, African dictatorship, sort of suggesting it to Obama, at some point, that perhaps you could take a thing or two from them and do that sometimes to get, some things done. But, I mean, so beyond funding is also, I think, correct me, him trying to have the experience, the actual lived experience. So it's not enough to sit back somewhere, kind of give the money, for the thing to get done. He actually moved, into these communities, into these countries. Was it to get the lived experience, or was it, that's why I say correct me, teach me, why was that important, that aspect of his activism?
My father was a goodwill ambassador to the UN, to UNICEF. And so he went all over the world with helping children, the plight of children all over the world. I also think that because he had already traveled so much and been on the ground to see things, he understood the difference, that when you actually go to a place and you meet with the people and you eat the food and you understand and you hear the language and you see it firsthand, that it creates a deeper connection to the issue, and it enables you. It's not lived experience, but it enables you to be more articulate about what you want to convey, the stories you want to tell. Also, my father, artistically, was always listening to different kinds of African music and seeing how he could blend it into his Caribbean music. And he was just that person. I mean, even as a child, when we would travel with him to places where he would tour, whether it was Europe or Japan or wherever, we would have, the luxury of staying in a hotel or whatever, but we would always have day trips where they would make us bring our little booklet and write about every day going into the interior, going to meet with the people, going to try and taste the food or going to the market, or going, he always thought it was important for us to see and to hear and to listen to the people.
Connect.
And while it's not our lived experience, we get to witness the lived experience.
Right.
And it's important.
And connect.
Yes.
Perhaps connect.
Yes.
Connect. Okay. Let's come back to Sankofa. Forgive me. I keep going back and forth.
It's okay.
You say one thing and it takes me right back somewhere else. Let's talk about Sankofa. Let's talk about, the criminal justice system, in the U.S. and why, again, it makes you do what you do. Back home, and I can speak to Ghana, when we think about the criminal justice system, perhaps because of all the movies and all the songs and, pop culture, and then we hear of activism in the United States against the judicial, it's like, wait, isn't that supposed to be the shining example of what it's supposed to be? Like, I hope you understand what I'm saying. So please educate us. What is it really? I mean, in terms of race, in terms of justice, what is it like?
Well, the United States has the largest prison population in the world. And most of the men and women who are incarcerated are men and women of color, whether they're predominantly black and then Latino. And part of the problem is poverty, drug addiction, and mental health. I would say those are the three main issues why people are incarcerated. Lack of resources in community. If you take a young person who has been incarcerated for over 40 years and release them back to their community with no skills for the over 40 years being in prison, what is the point of rehabilitation if you're not really providing resources and opportunity for people who are inside to come home and then participate? We throw people away. We disregard them. We feel like they're other, and there's a very big disconnect for the people to have a deeper understanding of that. They think, if you commit a crime, you should go to jail. And I think that there's other things that you can do other than go to jail pending your crime. If you are going to jail because you're addicted to drugs, you shouldn't go to jail. You should go to a space where you can not be addicted to drugs anymore. You should go to a rehabilitation space that will give you medical resources that will help you get unaddicted and also give you therapeutic resources so that you can understand why you're addicted in the first place and talk about that. And then help you find resources to heal yourself. If you are a woman who's been in a domestic dispute and you have killed your husband because you are defending yourself and you go to prison for it, you need to not be in prison for that. The state needs to understand how you were trying to maintain your survival. Why were you in this position? What put you there? How can you extricate yourself emotionally, psychologically from this old behavior so that you can be of service to the community and to your family and to yourself? We don't have a holistic approach to incarceration. We have a punitive approach. We put people down. We make them less than human. We disregard them. And when you make someone less than human, as we've seen with slavery, as we've seen with white supremacy, then you can disconnect and you can just toss them away like it doesn't matter. But these, in fact, are people. And then when we think about poverty in particular, a young person who maybe comes from a home that is, both the parents are working nights, so they're asleep, so there's no food when they get up in the morning to go to school and they're hungry, or if they don't have both parents at home and they go to school, on their way to school, they're trying to get there on time, but there's street activities going on that make it impossible for them to get there on time because they're trying to be pulled into criminal activity or into a gang. Then they finally get to school and they're late. And the first thing they see is some teacher going, "You're late," angry at them. Then they finally get into the classroom because they had to get a note from the principal. They finally get into the classroom. The session is always almost halfway over. They've missed it. They can't catch up. They don't know. The teacher gets mad at them. You know, the student by then just wants to go to the back of the building and drink a beer and smoke a joint, you know, like they want to disconnect. The pressure is too much coming from every single place. And we don't provide opportunity for a deeper understanding of that. So they start either getting addicted to drugs because they don't have a family space, or they go into gang activity, you know, because they feel a sense of purpose and a sense of belonging in that gang, or they start doing criminal activity because they're in poverty or because they have to prove themselves. And it's just a cycle. And it starts when they're in school in 3rd grade. And it just becomes a perpetuated cycle of the school to prison pipeline.
That's incredible work.
It's horrible. And then there's a whole host of people who are also in prison because of mistaken identity. It's not even them. Or they were there, but they really had nothing to do with it. They were just with their friend. Or there was pressure from other people that you better do it or I'll kill you, or I'll kill your sister. Or, you know, there's all of these other circumstances and reasons. And most of the time, district attorneys and judges, they don't care. You were there, you did it, you're away. I mean, a very famous case, for instance, is the Central Park Five, that we call them, you know? These young kids that were in the park, or I think at that time, just minding their own business, and all of a sudden they're you know, rallied up, taken to prison, to jail, and then everybody vilifies them, and everyone, because of the media, also perpetuates these stories. Our movies, our television shows perpetuate the stories. We're trying to shift more of that now. There are storytellers that are being more honest and truthful. But it's just a perpetuation of the problems, you know, and not really highlighting the good things. And now we're seeing more and more, like there's this really beautiful documentary that I just saw called Daughters. And it's about young women, young girls whose fathers are incarcerated, and they create a father-daughter dance where they go into the prison and the daughters get an opportunity to touch their fathers, some of them for the first time, because everything's been behind a glass wall. And it's really a rather touching, really beautiful documentary that shows the way in which we treat our incarcerated men in particular, but both men and women. And it's really unfortunate.
Wow. Again, incredible work. I mean, are there any ongoing projects? Do you have any campaigns, current ones running, that we should know about, that we should look out for, that we should go and support?
Yes, of
Lead
course.
us somewhere.
So there's so many. There's Raise the Age campaigns that in many states children are incarcerated as adults. And that is really, really very difficult when you have a young person that goes into an adult prison, because not only are they preyed upon, they're preyed upon for many different reasons. Sometimes it's sexual, and other times it's to indoctrinate them into more and further terrible activities. There's also returning citizens projects, like for instance at sankofa.org, we're working in new technology. So we have a virtual reality reentry program, which is a program that uses virtual reality, and we interviewed formerly incarcerated people to ask them what their trauma triggers were for when they come home, because many people come home and then they recidivate back to prison because they can't handle being in public. I mean, when you think about technology and you think about being incarcerated for 25 years, you come home and you're like, what's a QR code? I don't even know what that is. How do I check out at a grocery store myself? I don't even know how to do that. You know, I don't even know how to get a Metro card to get on the bus or the train.
Access a menu in a restaurant.
Yes, exactly. So this is basic things that we who are in society, we sort of, at first we don't know what it is, but we're not afraid to ask because nobody knows yet. A young man who was incarcerated told me a story that it was so disheartening. He came home, he only had, he had very little money, whatever money they gave him, which is not much, like, what is it, $20, $40, whatever it was. And he was hungry, he was very hungry. And so with the little money he had left at the time, he said, I thought I'd go to McDonald's to get some food. So he goes to McDonald's, and everything is automated. There are no people for him to say, can I please have it? Everything is touch screen, whatever. And he didn't know what to do. He felt embarrassed. He didn't ask anybody for help because he didn't know whether he could trust them. Maybe they'll try and steal it from him. So he left. Now, the good news is that he did not resort to bad behavior. But I don't know about all you. I know how I get when I get hungry. I get hangry. I'm like, if I don't eat something right now. So, this could resort to bad behavior, which would then make him potentially go back to prison. Thank God that didn't happen. But so we created scenarios in virtual reality where the men or the women get an opportunity to put on the goggles for virtual reality, and they're in the situation, so they're seeing the real space in real time. They're learning what to do to get a Metro card. They're learning what to do to use a QR code. They're learning what to do to take your groceries out and to see the bar, to swipe it and put it into the bag. And we're also doing conflict resolution in the virtual reality. So you'll be sitting in a room, you'll see two roommates having a conflict. One is organized, clean, the other one is messy and has everything all over the place. And then there's a conflict, and right before it gets physical, you'll have an opportunity to choose A, B, C. 3 opportunities for you to choose another way to resolve the issue. This gives them things to think about that doesn't occur to them. When we go inside and work with incarcerated men and women, we find that they can't be very emotional. They can be angry, but very rarely can they be really happy or sad. And definitely they can't be afraid, because if you're afraid, it's pretty much over for you. So we have a holistic program with the goggles, with the virtual reality. It's arts-based. And we deal with the happiness, anger, fear, and sadness, so that they can, again, begin to remember, even from when they were little. Oh, I remember I was sad. Oh, I remember when I was... And they can begin to have a relationship to those feelings again, so that when they come up for them outside, they're not ready to fight it off, but to actually feel the feelings, which gives them better communication with their mothers, their sisters, their daughters, their brothers, their fathers. So this is a lot of work. So it's about when our brothers and sisters come home that they can be successful in living out their lives.
Integrate better.
Yes,
wow.
yes.
Wow. Okay. Any future products? Any future projects? Are you dreaming some dreams of some future projects that you want to share?
Well, Sankofa is working on right now on raising some money to do a documentary film on Frederica and Huey P. Newton. And Huey P. Newton was one of the founders of the Black Panthers. So we're doing a documentary film there. We have a beautiful collaboration with a man by the name of Breon Bain. He's an artist and a professor. And he has a hip-hop spoken word musical about mass incarceration, about something that happened to him personally. And it's really fabulous, and we hope to bring that to Broadway in New York. We're hoping. And we have a civic engagement project that we do with young people. That's around, it's around cinema. And they have an opportunity to create, they work in collaborative spirit with poets and writers and musicians and directors and animators, and we create short form content that can be put on social media that helps talk about an issue, whether it's climate crisis or poverty or immigration or whatever is on the heart, mental health, on the heart of the young person. We help nurture their artistic process so that they can tell the story from the development process all the way to distribution.
Wow. I mean, this has been amazing. But I mean, I cannot let you leave without talking about We Are the World, right?
Of course.
I think that all of us can sing along.
Okay.
I remember it so well. And it was such an amazing project. Amazing project. I mean, it still is. Can I say that? Can I say that it still is?
Yes, of course it is.
Let's talk about that, and let's talk about the impacts of that. For me, it represents art and activism. If there was something I could immediately point to that everybody could identify with, where art is meaningful and it's touching and it's rich and it's efficient, that would be it for me. What would you say about it?
I think We Are the World is a wonderful example of art and activism. But I will also say that it was a moment that happened that was completely magical, and that we all need to think outside of the box and come up with new and interesting ways in which to make the same kind of impact. The beautiful thing about We Are the World and capitalism is that people are still buying the record. People are still downloading the record. People still want to use the record. So that income goes directly to USA for Africa. And USA for Africa still promotes, presents, supports different initiatives on the continent of Africa that are very, very important to many, many communities. And this is something that I'll say about activism, which is something that we were talking about before. You might have an idea like, I'm going to start a nonprofit. Before you start a nonprofit, before we started Sankofa, we did research to find out, is there another organization that does what we do, the way we do it? And there was none. So we created it. But if you want to start an organization around women's health or I don't know, whatever it might be, do the research first to find out if there's something that already exists. Because if there's something that already exists, you can use your passion and your excitement about that issue to support that already existing organization to help it grow and for it to get bigger. Do you see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And We Are the World, the revenue from We Are the World does that. It helps organizations discover themselves. It supports public broadcasting stations. It supports cottage industry, women making, shea butter and shampoo, and it's a very, very important entity. And it really is the beautiful embodiment of art and activism.
It's beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. Only because you brought up capitalism.
Okay.
Only because you brought up capitalism. I mean, the U.S. is about to go to the polls. The rest of us are, watching YouTube, following the live congresses, and all the wonderful things. As somebody that's passionate about women and women empowerment, I'm excited about the notion, of the first, female president of the United States. As an activist and as a socialist, how should I engage? How should I engage? How should I unpack? What lens should I experience what is going on? How should I?
This is the million-dollar question, I think the United States and capitalism both are a very complex and failed experiment. I think that excuse me. there's always a fraught tug of war within people that want to have pretty things and to still be modest, but also, don't want for other people to have exorbitant amounts of money. It's unnecessary. It's interesting. It's like, this is going to be a pretty bold thing to say, but I'm going to try it. I don't know. I'm working it out as I go, so bear with me. It's almost like the issue of abortion. It's a very personal issue. If you are a religious person, and I am not a religious person, I can't convince you of my perspective, and you can't convince me of yours for me or you to change. All I can do is respect that you have this feeling. But even with that said, you cannot tell me what to do. I need to be responsible for myself. So I don't know if you see the similarity there. The similarity is, I live in the United States in a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. I have friends who live in 6-bedroom, 3.5-bathroom houses. It's wonderful to go over to their house and enjoy an evening or swim in their pool. But I like my house. I don't want a pool. I don't want to have to take care of grounds and staff and things. So everybody doesn't want the same thing. And we should have the right to be able to be who we are authentically and not have to, either agree or be beholden to the other person because they feel so righteous about who they are. Now, as I connect that to capitalism because or socialism, or communism, because if you really break down, not so much capitalism, but if you really break down communism and socialism to the real raw core, it's really about healthy community, and while being self-responsible, also looking out for the community and the people around you. Capitalism is really about oppression. It's because for me to get more, you have to be down, and it's a quandary. It's a difficult. I think that part of the argument is competition. I think you can be competitive, and you can have winners and losers, and still not be such a drastic, level of distance between the two. I think people like Elon Musk and other people of that nature, they have much too much. They don't need so much money. Like, really? In how many lifetimes can you possibly, I mean, someone said, okay, one billionaire has something like 180 something billion dollars. There are 8 billion people on the planet. I said, what would happen if he gave each person $1 billion? He would still have like $160 billion. But what would we all do with just $1 billion each? Would it eradicate poverty? Would it eradicate issues of climate? Would it eradicate war? Would it? I don't know. Because what does real equity look like? What does real equity look like?
Wow.
When I think of Dr. King and the Poor People's Campaign, I'm looking at creating more equity for people. It's one thing to say it, and then it's another thing to really break it down, to really understand equity. In what way do you mean equity? Like equity so that a person can live in a really unattractive, really horrible place with no running water, but it's like They have a nice bed. Like, what is equity? Do all of our apartments then now look the same? I think the thing about capitalism that people are worried that if we don't live in a capitalist society, then we're all going to be the same. Like, we're not going to have diversity of culture anymore. We won't have diversity of things because everyone will be the same. And I don't believe that. No. But all of these questions kind of blend together. And so I don't really have an answer. I just have more questions.
What's your way? What's your way? What's your way? I want your way.
My way? Well, because I live in a capitalist society, because things cost so much money, the thing I worry about the most for my personal self, literally my personal self, not even my family, but me, is that if I have the good grace to live a long life, I hope that I can live it in comfort. I hope that when I get to be 90, that I need help, that I can have help, and that I can live in a place where I can have a railing, and that I can get from my bedroom to the bathroom or whatever, because you need resources, you need money and capital resources in order to be able to sustain yourself. So my way is just to meditate, pray, be a kind person, be of service, and hope for the best.
Absolutely. I like your way. I really like your way. I do. Wow. So what's the experience been in Ghana this time? How has
it's been such a beautiful.
Like? What have you been up to? Where have you been to? What have you eaten?
Okay. I'm going to say it wrong, and so forgive me. Is it called the Chalawate Festival?
Oh, Chalawate.
Chalawate. Yes. I went to that. Ooh. It was so fun. It was so people in costumes and amazing food and music and community. So that was amazing. I definitely did a little shopping. You have chocolate. I like chocolate, so I bought some chocolates for my friends. I got a really cool, I bought a man's shirt for myself,
You bought a man's shirt for yourself?
Yeah, it's the shirt that comes like this and then it kind of goes out here.
Oh, is it a batakari?
I think so, yes.
It's
not the one with sleeves, but the one without sleeves.
See what you mean.
Yes, and they have small.
Textured.
Yes, it's really, really good. Woven material, hand sewn by auntie,
Yes.
So it's been wonderful. I went to the market. I'm here with some other people. A fabulous woman from Senegal, Kumba Touré.
She's been here.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. So Kumba has been taking me around, and she's been showing me the sights and introducing me to people and being such a good friend. So it's been an amazing trip.
Now that you mention hair, because I know she's big on the jollof war.
Yes.
Have you had Ghana jollof?
Yes.
What do you think?
It's delicious. I mean,
way more delicious than the Senegalese jollof.
Than what?
Than the Senegalese jollof.
I don't know if I remember it enough to say one was better than the other. They're both very delicious. It's so interesting. The riff. It's like the Jamaicans and the Bajans.
Right. But I insist Ghana is winning. It's
like Trinidad and Jamaica.
But yeah, I mean, it's been enlightening, getting this opportunity to sit with you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for creating the space and giving me the platform to share. Thank you.
Hope you are coming back very soon.
I hope so too.
Thank you. Well, actually though, I won't go until I let you say your final words. Final words. Your final words. Anything you want to say. Be
safe, be smart, and be true to your heart.
Beautiful. Well, that has been my guest, Gina Belafonte. She works with Sankofa. She's here. She's directed you to courses that you can learn about, you can contribute. My takeaway from this conversation is activism and the fact that it doesn't have to be a certain way. Check yourself. What's your capacity? Check your heart. and do the best. Be the best that you can be. Thank you for watching the show. I'll see you. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I enjoyed this.